Okay. Winfrey, great to be speaking to you. Glad to have you on. We've had so many glitches, it's unbelievable. I'm not going to spend time talking about that now, and I may actually edit this a little bit out when you send me the message through the mail. But I want to start off by asking who you are, what you've experienced in life. Please be a primary source to the best of your ability. And, well, we did talk about this over the phone when we had that conversation, pre-show conversation earlier. If you want to regurgitate that stuff, by all means. If you feel that that stuff can help set the tone for the rest of this interview, then by all means, talk about it again. You got the floor. And again, I'm using this up into my head, so I'm probably going to take the phone away from my head because I don't want to keep it near my head for 2 hours. So, but I'll keep it on speakerphone, so I'll be able to hear what you're saying. So you got the floor. Introduce yourself. Be a primary source. Your life story. Keep it educational.
Okay. Well, just to give a little introduction, I'm not sure that there's anyone else on the planet that's doing anything close to what I'm doing. And what I'm doing is so far out of the box that somebody that's going to hear me for the first time, the most I can hope is that they will be curious and they will check me out, because the work I'm doing is getting the most incredible response from people. People are actually changing their lives. Andrew, you're making a lot of background noise.
All right, I'm going to try to cut back on that.
Okay.
So
I get emails from people that actually their whole life has changed as a result of connecting with my work. But it's not linear. It goes beyond the mind, okay? And it has to do with intelligence that is in the high end. Andrew, you're still making too much noise, okay?
I'm getting off speakerphone now. Okay, I'm off speakerphone, so you can start talking again. And it's gonna cut down.
I don't want you to get how would I say it?
It's okay. I'm off speakerphone. I realized what the problem was, and I realized that was the issue. So I just had to plug my phone into a jack, so it didn't so it wouldn't go dead during the interview.
Why don't you have a headset?
Oh, okay. Let me try that. All right. Well, I can do that. It's just that speaking into the phone is going to be a little more difficult. So, all right, hang on. I'm sorry. I didn't realize just how sensitive this phone is. All right.
You know what happens for me is all those sounds distract me, and I have to be very focused, you know?
Okay. Is it better now?
It's better.
Okay.
Well, I mean, at first glance, it's better. We'll see if you can keep still. Okay?
I will keep still. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to hang up, and then I'm going to call you back, okay?
Okay, just to talk this interview from the beginning.
Yeah,
okay,
that's
a good idea.
And when I call you back, let's not say anything other than say, I have Winfrey on the line, and then we can start, okay?
Okay, good idea.
Okay.
Make sure recorder is going.
Yeah.
Okay. I have Winfrey on the line. You may start the interview.
Hi, Andrew. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
You're very loud, you know.
Okay. I don't have speakerphone on. I just have a naturally loud voice. I'm holding the phone away from my head, so it's not blowing up.
So people that are listening, we have been going through a lot of stuff in order to get this recorded, because Andrew's microphone isn't working on his Skype. So we figured out how to do it.
Yeah.
And Andrew, tell me, why did you want me? See, now I'm interviewing him. All right. Why did you want me as a guest?
Because I saw your interview with Alfred Weber that was done several months ago, and I was most intrigued by what you had to offer, not just with the stuff involving David Wilcock being the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce, but also the other stuff regarding the Elohim and what they are and what they aren't and how they can affect humanity and all that. And I'm thinking, whoa, there's a lot of missing links that can be tied up with the information and the stuff that this guy has to offer. I need to give him the opportunity to come on the show, and kind of makes me wonder if maybe artificial intelligence is trying to sabotage this interview or make it hard for us to connect, put us through all these trouble because, well, they don't want us to connect. Well, maybe I'm giving myself too much credit, but that's it in a nutshell. And your comrade, Terry, what's her name? Terry, what was her last name? I'm talking about
Terry Brown.
Yes, Terry Brown. She was wasn't able to come on. I would have loved to kill two birds with one stone, or should I say feed two birds with one seed by having you guys both on, but you said that wasn't probably not the best way to go for it on the first time. So it's just having you now, and if Terry Brown would like to come on in the future, then by all means I'm willing to let her come on the future show. But I'm having you now, so you can set the stage for this by set the tone for the rest of the interview, talk about whatever you want to talk about, set the stage, you got the floor.
Thank you. Well, I think what I want to do is try to give the best overview so someone listening knows what to look for, because what I'm doing is extremely unusual, and no matter how many things you've looked at or listened to, it's on a little bit of a different page, and it's actually hard to believe. It was hard for me to believe it. Most people know me in a public way as being the guy who authored the book The Reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. And I did this before Edgar Cayce, or before David Wilcock really hit the mainstream. And the book was probably implemental in David's present state of recognition, if people know who he is. And of course, people may not even know who Edgar Cayce was, so maybe I should say there was a guy who died in 1945 who for 40 years of his life would go into these trances. People would ask him questions, and he demonstrated virtual omniscience. He could just have a person's name and city, and he could precisely pinpoint their health issues. He could recommend alternative cures that no one had ever come up with before. And after a while, people started to ask him questions about how the universe works, about past lives, and he would answer those questions. And he is often considered the most documented and accurate psychic prophet in the history of our planet. Many people, when he died, his children opened a library of his work, and he had done 15,000 readings that were transcribed in this library. And various people would come to research the library. Many times, people who were wanting to prove him to be a fake. And they ended up writing books in his support. One of the early books became a New York Times bestseller called The Sleeping Prophet. So when I was younger, I had studied a lot of Edgar Cayce. I was a spiritual seeker. I wanted to know how things worked. I wasn't sure I believed in anything. And Edgar Cayce was so thoroughly documented and so accurate that it led me to say, there is something out there that I don't understand. And I didn't really know how Edgar Cayce did what he did, and I didn't know who was talking through him, but I knew he was accurate, and I also knew that whatever was speaking through him had a high positive intent to contribute to mankind. So that was probably 30 years ago. And then in 1999, I ran into a website of a young guy. Too much noise, Andrew. I got to stop the interview, okay?
I'm sorry. I just hadn't been down to
Let's,
pick it up.
I mean, I can't concentrate. It takes a lot of focus to do this, okay?
Okay, is there a way for me to mute myself? Okay. I forgot to mute myself. Now I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. So, in 1999, I discovered a website of a young man who alleged to have a connection with Edgar Cayce. And I started studying his website. And after a couple of weeks, I said, if this guy is telling the truth, he has to be the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. And what actually impressed me the most about this was the fact that his channelings were so profound and deep, much more so than him. And I was actually learning things from his channelings. Plus, just to give you an idea, he was the spitting image of a young Edgar Cayce. There were loads of correlations connecting him with Cayce. And I think he was 28 years old, and he was somewhat apprehensive about being publicly outed as Cayce. He is not sure how people would respond to him, and if he could fill the shoes of being the reincarnation of the most, as I said earlier, the most documented psychic prophet in the history of our planet. And I could understand it, because he was thinking everyone would think he knew all the answers, which he didn't. And the book finally came out. And when the book came out, he made the decision he was not going to publicly talk about being Edgar Cayce. And he wasn't going to do radio shows. He wasn't going to say anything about it. And he went on to kind of be an expert on ancient aliens. He was on that TV show. He was talking about conspiracies and secret space projects and ETs, whatever, and not too much about shadowing. And what happened was, in the course of writing the book, and I'll tell you, when I was writing the book, I was having epiphanies. I couldn't believe that I actually discovered the guy that was the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. And in the middle of writing the book, now here's where it goes off the deep end. In 2002, I had a new girlfriend, and we were taking a drive from Los Angeles to Portland, Oregon. And it was pouring rain, and I did a prayer of protection. And at the end of the prayer, I said, "Does anybody want to talk to me?" Like a joke. And the woman answered, and she said, "We're here. Do you have questions?" So I thought she was just joking along, and I started asking some questions, and she said, after a few minutes, "That's the strangest thing that ever happened to me." So remember, we're driving in a rainstorm, and this is all happening in the car, with the rain beating on the roof, and I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't know if she was crazy. I didn't know if it was positive. But we continued to Portland. And we went 3 days later in a Portland hotel. I asked her if she wanted to try that again. And I took a tape recorder out. So again, I asked my opening question, "Does anybody want to talk to me?" And again, there was an answer that said to ask them questions. So my first question was, "How come my girlfriend can do this?" And they said, "Your girlfriend's from another dimension. She came here to bring these messages in, and this is an important connection." And then I said, "How do I know that she's not crazy, schizophrenic, and this is some voice from her own consciousness? Can you guys predict a newspaper headline?" And they said they could. And then they said, "Watch for this headline in 2 weeks." And in 2 weeks, there was the headline. So they had my attention now. And I mean, this was very bizarre, because I'm writing this book about the world's most famous prophet psychic, and suddenly my girlfriend is channeling. And I knew enough to know that I needed to check it out really carefully, that you can have negative sources coming through, and I had to make sure that that wasn't happening in this case. So for the next 6 months, she would interrupt me, and she would say, "Those guys want to talk to you again." And I'm continuing to ask some of the most sophisticated metaphysical spiritual questions I could think of, and they are very masterfully answering each one. Now, they identified themselves by a name, and they said they were the Council of Elohim. And I googled the word Elohim, and I found out it was one of the names for God in the Old Testament, and it was the name the Mormons used for God, and also the creators of the universe. So I asked them, "Are you the same Elohim?" And they said, "We're part of the same." And I said, "Why are you talking to me?" And they said, "You're like a cosmic midwife. You know how to bring these things into the world, and you don't have ego about it." Now remember, I'm still trying to decide if I trust them. And this was almost a little embarrassing to have this kind of contact with a source that was so exalted in the middle of writing this book about David Wilcock being Edgar Cayce. And let me just say, if you've ever been interested in Edgar Cayce, or if what I'm saying intrigues you, the book's available on Amazon. It's called The Reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. So I'm trying to reconcile who this voice is that say they're the Elohim. And about 4 months into this, somebody close to me was having a medical issue, and they were supposed to die. They were going to have an operation that was very serious. So I decided I was going to test them. And I did a session, and I said, can you save my sister's life? Can you help my sister, is actually what I said. And they said they could. So my sister ended up surviving this very critical operation and had a medical miracle that could not have happened by the normal laws of Western medicine. So I was beginning to think they were who they said they were, and I still had no idea how to put this out into the world, but I hung with it. Now, the next thing that happened is that my friend who was channeling left me about 6 months into this. She was quite scared of the whole thing. And after she left, I spent a couple of weeks thinking, okay, this is the end of this. I can go back to my regular life. And I was getting a little lonely and sad. So I called my old girlfriend up. Her name is Terry. And she came over. And in the middle of the night, she woke me up and she said, get the tape recorder out. And the voice came through her that said it was the same Elohim, and I could reach them through Terry. Now, I can tell you initially, I was thinking that Terry was jealous, that Terry was wanting to be important to me, to win me over, and for the next 2 months, almost every day we had a session where I would ask more questions. And eventually, I decided it was the same source. And in fact, I decided they were who they said they were. And I wrote a book that I give away for free, which you can download on my website, intelligent-infinity.com. And this is basically how this all started. So, why is this important? Well, the Elohim is not God in the traditional religious view of God. They've explained that they are a group soul at the highest dimension possible, at the beginning of creation, and that they explained how they created the template for the universe, which was going to kind of self-evolved, but it had to get started first. And if you've wondered about religion, about God, about metaphysical things, then my work can make a huge contribution to your own seeking. You know, I get the most amazing emails from people who have discovered me. And you who are listening, most of you are probably discovering me right now. And it's like you have to reach back and see what happens here, because there's so many things about this connection that are non-linear, that don't make sense in normal linearity. Okay? I just thought I'd read some email excerpts from people. All my life, I've been asking, who is God? How did everything begin? What was the creation process? Who are the angels? How does reincarnation work? Everything has been answered, plus more. I always felt alone and misunderstood, because I was always searching for truth, where others were content with what they were taught at school or church. I feel connected, happy, and part of a family. Thank you, Sarah. Or here's somebody that read The Reincarnation of Edgar Cayce, and they said, now I understand what I've always felt and understood, but couldn't articulate. I understand my purpose here now. Everything finally makes sense. And let's see.
Running out of talking points, perhaps?
Pardon me?
Are you running out of talking points, things to discuss? I've got questions.
No.
If you're interested.
Okay, yeah, that would be okay. On my first, I'm just reading a couple of these testimonials because I want people to hear how my work has impacted others. I do conference calls, and we do quite a few of them, and people feel energy on the call. And the Elohim has demonstrated this ability to project energy from where they are into this realm. And so when I do these conference calls, it's as if they are rebroadcasting their energies and using me as an anchor to get it across. So I got lots of people who feel energy. Like on my first conference call Sunday, I felt energy moving and my heart chakra wide open. I could feel the energy surge through me. Let's see. I am a truth seeker, always had an open mind, and I was live on Sunday's call, and I felt the light energy go through parts of my body when you talked about picturing the light coming up from Earth and into the heaven realms. I am so happy I found you, and thanks for your work. I go on and on and on, but many, many people feel energy. And Andrew wanted to say something or ask some questions. So go ahead, Andrew.
Yes, thank you very much. And, well, seeing the questions that you have on your website here, I guess it makes sense for me to ask you these questions that you've already asked on your site to see how you can elaborate on them. You obviously put these questions here because you think that, well, you have good answers to them, I'm sure, and they're certainly worthwhile questions to ask. Well, first question, did you ever wonder how the universe works? Well, being the host of Nature and Reality Radio, that's something that I have dwelled on more than anybody else on the face of the earth. Nobody has a more difficult time understanding the nature of reality than I. That's why I am the host of this show, naturally. So when it comes to understanding how the universe works, well, we could spend all day talking about that, but when you realize that everything is infinite consciousness, or is it? Is there, can you go further and say that soul is what everything is? Because people like George Lasso say that consciousness and spirit emanate from soul. And then again, there's people that would make the difference, say that soul and spirit are just two different terms for the same thing. It's one of those agree kind of things. But leading into the next question here, can one prove that there is positive intelligence on invisible dimensions that can help us on both individual and collective levels? Well, this is interesting because I was recently listening to one of Cryon's interviews or lectures, and he was talking about how it's kind of a bad idea to put like names and faces and images and drawings of like the archangels and such, because well, we as humans naturally have a tendency to do that. But in reality, it's not right to give them like names and try to draw images and give them faces and such, because it's really nothing more than information at a conscious level intermingling with you and the rest of the universe to help you or assist you or be a tool in some way for whatever it is that you seek to get assistance for. So, I guess that's one way to start off. Do you agree or disagree with Cryon's assertion that we shouldn't really be giving like names and faces and images to these entities, these angels, these guides, and Elohim, whatever you want to call them, because it's really nothing more than information at some sort of a soul consciousness isness level.
Well, I don't know if I want to agree or disagree with Cryon, okay? People have their own approach to how they work this out and how they make their connections. And the higher sources make connections with people, very individual to who the person is. I think what I could explain here is this idea of how did the universe get started and what did the Elohim do and how it got screwed up. And I will say that at the higher realms there's not bodies, there's energy forms. It's as things get more dense, the universe is banded in realms, and each realm has different characteristics, and it's somewhat like the way water, ice, and steam interrelate. The higher realms of the universe are more like steam, and the lower realms are more like ice, because they're more dense, whereas steam is not dense. Steam can move around, and it can take on the characteristics of whatever form is around it. Ice is rigid, and it's not flexible. And that every human has a multidimensional side, which means they are part physical and part not physical. But most people don't know that, or many people don't know that, because how do you connect with the non-physical part of yourself. If it's not physical, how do you know you're making a connection? So, to give like a little outline of how the Elohim created the universe, the beginning stages of it, and Andrew, just feel free to stop me if I say something you don't understand. Just interrupt, okay?
Okay, but just so you know, I'm not like Alex Jones. I don't have interruptitis like that. I do occasionally filibuster my guests before giving them the floor, and I've been criticized for that, but I try not to interrupt. So,
well, just if a question comes into your mind, the chances are the same question is coming into the mind of people listening. So it's okay not to interrupt to show me how smart you are, or whatever, but interrupt because it's a genuine question that left you hanging on something I said. That's really the best use of that. So let's just look at the universe. At one point, there was no universe, at least according to my information. There was just what you might call void, nothing, no time, no atoms, nothing. And by some inexplicable mystery, nothing became aware of itself. And there was a first awareness, which my sources refer to as the one infinite creator. Now, this first awareness was not God. In fact, they were learning as they were going, just as all of us have to do. And they got a little lonely because they were all that was, all that is. So it decided, this first awareness, it learned that it could take its energy and separate it so it had a separate decision-making volition. It was still part of the original energy, but now it was a new energy that knew it was part of the original energy, but could make its own decisions and do its own creation. So it stayed in connection with the original first cause, and then there became another one, and another one, and another one. And before you know it, there were millions of subdivisions of the one infinite creator. And I guess the one infinite creator stopped being lonely, and there was a sense of involvement. And so now, these original subdivisions, if my information is correct, because I don't tell anyone to believe this. This is a lot to believe, and you shouldn't believe it. You have to start reading some of their stuff and how they explain different things, and decide if it's credible to you. But the Elohim were cooperating with each other, and they had this idea of creating persistence. Originally, there was no persistence. Everything was just invisible energies that were floating around that could recognize another energy, and then it was an experience, and then there was no experience. So, in our world, in the world we live in, there's a lot of persistence. When you come home, your house is there. When you go see your friend is in their body. Everything is in a state of, I could say, rigid physical manifestation. And at the Elohim level, it was more non-physical energy. There was nothing to see, but they could feel each other. So they found they could create frequencies. They could generate frequencies, and they would work as a team, and each one would create a different frequency, and the frequencies would come together and create nodes or harmonics, and that would create a point in time-space, or in space-time. Space-time is in the world of manifestation, and time-space is in the world of higher vibration, of nothing physical. So they started manifesting by interfacing with frequency, and in a certain sense they were experimenting. They didn't know exactly what to do or what would happen. And initially they were spinning out galaxies, planets, and they resolved that as this new arena was being manifested, that everything in it would get free will. They didn't want to boss it around. They didn't want it genuflecting to them. That if they chose back and wanted to connect, they could, and if they didn't, it was okay. And so you have a universe on the first step of evolution. And then you start having some beings in the universe. And the beings are communicating with each other. In the early stages, the Elohim had sent some of their members into some of the bodies that were being created, and to experience what this creation was firsthand. And then they got stuck in the bodies, and they got stuck probably because of sex, because they were having sex with some of the new beings that are being created, and they could not get out and go back to the realm they came from. So the Elohim that got stuck oftentimes became what we call negative. That in this realm there's a benefit to having slaves because it's a physical realm. Somebody needs to clean the house, somebody needs to grow the food, and so the Elohim were kind of exalted, even though they didn't know they were Elohim, and they could get other people to defer to them, and they did. And this was going on for a long time, and eventually people were getting lost in this realm. They lost their connection with the higher realms. Everyone has part of all that is inside them. It's something to access. And when you access it, your life becomes more meaningful. You make deeper contributions to people around you. And this was one of the things that was happening. Except the Elohim started to get off on controlling everybody, the Elohim that took bodies. And instead of working on helping those beings evolve, which was the hope of the higher Elohim, they were using those beings to be more comfortable in the physical realm as slaves. And that's part of the heritage of us, that some of the beings that are in the negative were formerly Elohim, some of them, who in their quest to control everything became the secret societies of today, the hidden governments. Now, they don't know they're Elohim, but on some level they think they're superior to the rest of us, and they play that out. Now, the celestial Elohim has watched all of this evolve for a very long time, and they will come through people in channelings to try to key them into a higher experience. The cosmic Elohim is still pure energy, and they can do interventions, and they have done interventions. But in their interventions, they have a clause that it must be something for the highest good of all concerned, and this is a short synopsis of how we've gotten to where we are and why the world is screwed up. Now, it's interesting because I said earlier the Mormons use the word Elohim as one of their names for God. And I got to ask a lot of questions about the Mormons. And the Mormons came into this realm after they got, the Elohim started that religion because this realm was falling apart, and there were a number of Elohim souls that were willing to take bodies, and they did that in the Mormons, and they wanted to create a dogma, a religious dogma, that would remind these Elohim souls that they were here to be of service. They were here to help and try to protect them from going negative. Because they were Elohim, they had a lot of power in this realm. And if they used their power, they could dominate very easily other people. So the celestial Elohim was hoping to send people from the higher realms who could help it evolve. And Andrew, you have any questions on that?
Yes. Like I said, I try not to interrupt my guests while they're talking, but yeah, you've opened up some cans worms here. A couple things. First of all, when we use the term Elohim, people who have done research on this subject, among others, Zechariah Sitchin, have said that the terms Anunnaki, Nephilim, and Elohim can be used interchangeably, but they are not all one and the same. As in, not all Anunnaki are Elohim, not all Elohim are Nephilim, and any other combination of the three that you might want to say. So that opens up a whole can of worms as to factionalizing the different groups of Anunnaki, Nephilim, and Elohim and identifying them as what they are and which ones are good and which ones are bad and whatnot. George Kavakos has also said that the term Anunnaki should also be thought of as a hodgepodge of different extraterrestrial groups that are like the children of a universal geneticist entity. And you seem to suggest that the Elohim was, well, similar to that, and, well, I guess you could say the Nephilim is the same too, but why do we have to complicate the issue by using so many terms? Is there any possible way to simplify that? So I guess that will be my first question, and then, yeah, I have a couple of things after that. So this whole thing about using the terms Elohim, Anunnaki, and Nephilim interchangeably, can you make sense of the whole compare and contrast between those two terms?
Well, I will tell you that when I was first talking to them, I was aware that the Anunnaki called themselves Elohim. And I was also not trusting the Anunnaki. I had read enough to know that, of course, if the Zecharia Sitchin work, that the Anunnaki engineered humankind to be their slaves to bring in gold, to mine gold. And of course the Anunnaki said, the Bible says, the sons of man, the sons of God mated with the sons of God mated with, how's that go?
I think it's sons of God, daughters with
the daughters of man, okay? So now it sounds like the Elohim is running around having sex with the women on this planet, right? So I asked a number of questions about that, and I considered the possibility that I was being duped and that I was talking to the Anunnaki, and ultimately I became convinced that it wasn't the Anunnaki. So why do the Anunnaki call themselves Elohim? Okay, originally, as the universe was being created, and as there were beings in the universe, many of them were acting to help evolve the universe, to help seed our planet. The Anunnaki was one of those groups that had been evolved from the Elohim initially, and did a lot of initial groundwork on creating the circumstances of the physical realm. And they knew they were connected to the Elohim, and they continued to say that. And that's the connection. They were the Elohim maybe millions or trillions of years ago, and at this point now, if you've studied Sitchin, you find out they're two competing brothers, okay, who have different ideas of what to do with these evolving humans. You know those stories, don't you, Andrew?
Yeah, and I'm not even going to go into a whole can of worms about all that stuff about people that tried to discredit and demonize Zechariah Sitchin by painting him in the bad light and saying he's disintelligent. I have on previous shows explained that that's all fraudulent, and how the Akashic Records actually confirmed that Zechariah Sitchin's first 3 books are very accurate in terms of the events, with a few mistakes here and there, but that's a whole new other story. People can listen to my other shows regarding that. But yes, I have read Sitchin's first 3 books after I heard the Akashic Records say that they are accurate in terms of events. So so yes, I am familiar with it. And don't even get me started on Robert Stanley's take, opening up a whole can of worms, saying that Enki and Enlil is the bad guy of the Anunnaki. Because I don't doubt Robert Stanley knows what he's talking about, but I think he must be mistaken about something. But that's another subject. Carry on.
Are you aware of the work of Michael Tellinger?
Yeah, I interviewed him on my show, as a matter of fact, and he's also a fiction leader.
Yeah, well, Michael Tellinger is a Sitchin believer, but he also did his own independent research. And he found the landing pads of the Anunnaki in South Africa. Did you know that? Did he talk about that?
I believe he did.
Yeah. And it's very interesting because he went through the God of the Old Testament. And, he had a chapter in his book, Slave Species of the Gods, where he took all these quotes from God, and when you take them out of context, you say, how could that be God? In other words, in the people of the Old Testament, there were things like sacrifice your firstborn. There were things like if somebody is gay, kill them, or I can't remember. But they were kind of shocking, and it certainly did not sound like a loving, accepting God, but there it is in the Old Testament. And the theory is that as the Anunnaki were proliferating, and as they were expanding to all these different cities, there would be an Anunnaki lord for each city, and that would be the god of that city. So this is why even in England they call them lords, because they were derivative of Anunnaki. So the theory is that the entire Old Testament was Anunnaki gods. And the New Testament, at least the beginning of it, was taking away from all the Anunnaki gods. That was why there was such a thing as there's only one God, and that each of the Anunnaki gods was trying to be the one God, but they would fight with each other. And, let me go back and give a little more overview here. If you recall, when I was starting this, we were talking about the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. And we were talking about a group soul that was made up of graduates of this realm. And that group soul has been an incredibly important player in the history of our planet. And they identified themselves as the Ra group. And this was not the Ra of ancient Egypt. This was not Amun-Ra. And Amun-Ra was kind of a knockoff of the Ra group after they made a very dramatic intervention here where people could see them in their bodies. So, for thousands of years, the negative was in charge of all the cities and countries of old. And they were attempting to control the people by this idea that they were God or gods, and that if the people didn't defer, the people would be punished. So this was going on for thousands of years, and it's even going on today. Now, does that answer anything?
Oh, yeah. I have no doubt that it's still going on today at some level. However, it should be noted that people have said, among them like James Gilliland and also Brad Johnson and Chandler Jonas and Andrew Barton, the Akashic Jeter, that the Anunnaki from the planet Nibiru that Zechariah Sitchin glorified, those specific Anunnaki are locked out of our reality. They are no longer involved in our reality, but other groups of Anunnaki, because again, the Anunnaki is a hodgepodge of extraterrestrial groups, are still involved in our reality. So I just wanted to...
Now,
you have anything to say about that?
I am not going to take what anyone else says as true, including myself. But I have asked numerous questions about all of this. And one of the ideas I got... can you hear me, Andrew? I just want to check.
Yes, I do hear you, and I am putting myself on mute so you don't have to worry about that background noise like you had at the beginning.
I'm plugged into the wrong earphone jack, no? Andrew, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Wait a second.
Is something wrong?
Wait. I think I see the problem here. Maybe.
You are breaking up a little bit.
Hello?
Artificial intelligence must be trying to sabotage us.
Andrew?
I am here. Are you there?
Oh, I hear you now.
Okay, I don't know what just happened, but yeah, you are breaking up a little bit. It must be some artificial intelligence sabotage, just like what else could it be?
Well, in any case, you know, the simple explanation for that whole Anunnaki incident, and since we're talking about it, I'll share my understanding of it, is that the Anunnaki landed here with the idea of needing gold to take back to their home planet. And they were not well suited to do physical labor in this realm. So they decided to create a hybrid between themselves and an ape. And they did that, and they called their first hybrids Lulus. Now, the two brothers had a difference of opinion. And one of the brothers, the Enlil brother, according to the Sitchin material, did not want the humans to procreate. There was a planetary edict for space travelers of not messing around with the evolutionary process of a planet. So Enlil's idea was they could create these humans, but if none of them survived, they wouldn't be violating the planetary edict on that. So the other brother was Enki, and Enki wanted to evolve the humans into Godhead. So the brothers became bitter enemies.
Yeah, this is all familiar. I was very familiar with this whole story. Just a side note, Akashic Edgar Cayce did say that Sitchin was mistaken about the reason the Anunnaki wanted the gold. It was not to shield the atmosphere of their planet Nibiru. It was, well, for another reason, which I will direct people to his 30-part interview series with Lance White. Part 2 of that series was the one where he talks about that in greater detail.
Was that about the creation of monatomic gold?
It may have something to do with that. It also had some other things, some other features besides that. Like bringing entities into a machine or something, like using the gold as like a luring thing. And he also said the Anunnaki were actually lured to Earth. They did not come here on a mission. They were lured by one of the, Edgar just talks about how there were 15 beings, which there's now 6 beings because the other beings underwent service to self-ascension. The 6 remaining ones, which I think are the 6 Lords of Darkness that George Cavazos has referenced, the one that was in charge of the Middle East region of Earth lured them to Earth. So they did not come here on a mission to get gold to shield the Nibiru's atmosphere. It's just something I figured I'd point out. But I do have other things I would like to ask you about and discuss. And, is reincarnation real? I want to talk about this and whether or not it's a good thing or not a good thing. Marcus has said, Edgar Marcus said, reincarnation is not something you want to have. You don't want to reincarnate because it's basically keeping you stuck in the matrix. If you reincarnate back into something after dying on Earth, you want to ascend. You want to get into a higher level, a higher dimension density, whatever you want to call it, of consciousness, a higher vibration. So reincarnation in that sense is not your friend. I've heard some people disagree with that and say that there are some forms of reincarnation that can be beneficial. So what's your take on it?
Well, I've asked numerous questions about this, okay? And some people think reincarnation was something that was created by the negative to keep people trapped, okay? The answer is not a simple answer, and it's different and unique for each person. But say, for example, you graduate this realm and then you decide to come back and get back into reincarnation. Well, from my understanding, if nobody came back from the higher realms back into this realm, the realm would be owned by the negative, even more than it is now. They would just run it. And so it's a great service to come back into this realm. Sometimes people come back into this realm because somebody they've loved is in it and they want to help them. There's a desire to live forever, and some people think that's a good thing, and other people think it's not a good thing, because reincarnation, you keep coming back with the same soul but a blank canvas, and you get to start in this realm with no preconceptions. Not everybody that comes into this realm gets trapped by the negative. They manage to stay above that. And many people do get trapped, even when they've evolved. It's all a very individual thing. And you can't make blanket statements, although I've heard people that have made blanket statements. Like, for example, a lot of people are waiting for the big event, are waiting for ascension. And according to my sources, it's not exactly the way it's going to happen. Let me refer to something. Okay, heaven. It's very interesting the way they describe the heaven realms. They explain that there is a halfway house that someone has the potential to go to after they die. And when they go there, there are bunches of volunteers that are helping to de-stress people who went through a physical embodiment and got all screwed up. People that are open-hearted people come into this realm and they get screwed up. They get trauma. They get raped. They get abused. They have terrible deaths, not through any karma of their own. And when they die, there's this option to go through this tunnel of light which takes them out of this dimension and into a higher dimension and be worked on by very loving entities that we call angels. And once they're worked on, they have a choice whether they want to keep going, they want to have an incarnation in another planet, or they want to go back to Earth. And many of them opt to go back to Earth, and they end up incarnating in a family or a partner with someone they had a past relationship with. And so it's not a simple answer. Some of the views on ascension, in the way they're being popularly viewed, like there's going to be some kind of rapture, I'm not getting that at all. I'm getting it's an individual thing, person by person, and that the Ra group, the group soul that's made up of graduates, is working much more closer in with what we call that ascension process than the Elohim group soul. So it's, when I try to get like a simple answer from my sources, they always say it's more complex and it's individual. And should you reincarnate or should you not? At a certain point you have choice, and many times when people have choice, they still decide they want to come in and take a body. They want to incarnate into a family that they were in previously. They want to save this realm. They think it looks easy from the other side. So, does that answer your question?
I don't think you could have answered it any better than the way you did. And yeah, it's no surprise that your sources will not really give you a simple answer. It has to be complicated, of course, because universe is complicated in many ways. But yeah, let's backtrack for a moment here. Talking about the universe and how it started. The idea that, well, we're infinite consciousness, if everything is infinite consciousness, then that would imply that there couldn't have been a Big Bang, because if it's infinite, then there was no beginning, because that the idea of there being a beginning flies in the face of everything being infinite. Now, the Big Bang enthusiasts will always try to point to that incident at Princeton Laboratories where those two guys, Penzias and Wilson, allegedly found something called cosmic microwave background radiation, which they allege was a leftover from the Big Bang. The interesting thing, however, is in all the sources that say that that is what they found, they don't ever provide a single shred of evidence that whatever that was that Arnie Pentas and Robert Wilson found was actually, truly something from a Big Bang at the beginning of the universe. They basically just say, well, that's what they found, and that we say so, and if you don't believe it, you're a crackpot. So that's the way the textbooks have written it, and ever since then, people have allegedly been believing this Big Bang bullcrap, when in reality the universe is really nothing of the sort. Now, the one question I would really like to know is, well, okay, if there was a Big Bang, then what is that thing that Pengup and Wilson found? I mean, they didn't find, they thought maybe it was bird shit, but no, it's not bird shit, it's something else. And, well, what is it? If there was no Big Bang, they must have found something. And, well, I guess the question to you is, do you agree with the notion that if everything is infinite, then there was no Big Bang?
Well, keep in mind that according to my sources, there was a beginning to the universe. And there was no physicalization until the Elohim started manipulating frequencies and energies. And concerning the Big Bang, it seems like I asked them a question about that. I've asked them every question under the sun. In fact, if your listeners are curious, then we actually have people ask questions. Like Andrew, you could come in and ask one of these questions on a Wednesday night, and Terry channels the answers. And it is kind of mind-blowing to listen to this in the moment. And, it gives you some idea to decide, is this a trustworthy source or not? But it seems to me there was a Big Bang, but I can't remember anything more than that.
Well, since you mentioned that, I did interview Carl Johan Kalimann. There are people who say he deserves a lot more credit for what he says. He seems to think that, it wasn't like 13.4 billion years ago, like science says. It was more like 16 billion years ago when his version of the timeline started. But what he sees happening at the beginning of that timeline is different from the Big Bang that basically science would talk about having existed. And in my interview with Daniel Scranton, I do believe that when he was channeling one of the higher level entities that he channeled, I do believe I asked what did happen at that Big Bang, so to speak, starting point in Carl Johan Kalimann's timeline calendar of 16 point whatever billion years ago that it was. And, well, I don't remember the answer, but people are more than welcome to listen to the interview and see what they said. But with that being said, if Carl Johan Kalimann is right, then what could be said to have happened at the beginning of his timeline, 16, 15 billion years ago?
Are you asking me that?
What?
Are you posing that question to me?
Yes, I am.
I really don't know how to answer it. Okay.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, you're welcome to come on a Wednesday call. Listen to one of my calls and come in. It's just a pre-conference call, and you can submit a question to me. And if I think it's appropriate, which I probably would, I'll ask it, and you can see what they say. I mean, I have some very sophisticated scientific people coming into those calls that are amazed at the answers that come through these sources. And far beyond anything Terry could ever come up with in her wildest imagination. But one thing I want to make sure that I cover here that is, there's one which you're drawing on. So what is actual history? What is it? How does it work? Was there a Big Bang? Wasn't there a Big Bang? Was the Anunnaki this? Wasn't the Anunnaki that? But there's another aspect to communicating with these group souls that is far more important than the specifics answers of history. I mean, they could give an answer, and they do, but why is my answer more valid than this person's, Cryon's answer? Or who should you believe? And if you believe me and not Cryon, or you believe Cryon and not me, what difference does it make to your own personal evolution and the evolution of our planet? So what makes a difference in the connection with these sources is very profound. And I want to address that because some of the people listening, this can be the most important thing you ever heard. Let's look at consciousness. Let's look at you. You are a soul connected to a body. You are an energy form connected to a body. And your body is rigid. It is, it doesn't shift. Maybe over years it gets fatter, but otherwise your body is probably fixed, inertia. Your soul is different. Your soul is not fixed. Your soul is moving and changing all the time. Your soul, when you think about someone, your soul actually moves to that person and you're with them. That's my experience. And when I was younger, I used to have all kinds of experiences like that, where I think of somebody and the phone would ring and it would be them. And it happened so many times, I knew that there was a connection, that there was some connection between my thoughts and that person. So your soul is malleable, and your body is fixed. Your soul is multidimensional. It can expand and it can contract. The soul can merge with other for a temporary. When you have sex, what do you think? Let's say it's good sex and there's care and love. When you have sex, souls are temporarily coming together and becoming one. They don't stay that way. Everyone is sovereign. But after a while, you can actually have an ongoing activity with another being that's connected. And then let's group energy. If you go to a movie and it's a good movie, or you go to a musical concert and it's good, everyone in that movie gets their energy moved at the same rate. And when you leave the movie theater, if everyone was touched, you look at someone else and there is an energy of oneness, of connection. Everyone thinks similar way. Then they're going to go back and separate and go back to their individual lives. There's something that's very fulfilling about having that experience, whether it's becoming one through sex, or becoming one through a movie, from music, or even a common purpose. People with a common purpose can feel connected as they go to fulfill their purpose. So our energies, our souls, are constantly shifting. They're constantly expanding, contracting, becoming one with other people. You walk into a restaurant and you feel good vibes. Your energy is merged with the energy of the restaurant and you feel comfortable there to a certain extent. So now, how far can you expand this concept? What happens on we have a healing call every night called Whole Planet Healing. And I tell you that this has all been experimental for years. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I can feel energies, and I know when things are happening. It's not like the Elohim told me to do anything, but I could. One of the first epiphanies I've had in the relationship with the Elohim was in 2004, and I gave my first public talk at an expo in San Diego. And while I was in front of the room, looking at the room, I could see energy in the room. Now, I've seen energy in the presence of certain spiritual teachers. I've seen energy, sometimes I used to play music, when I would play music. And this was like some of the strongest energy I had ever experienced. And it was kind of like a cloud of light that was dancing around the people in the room. And when my talk was over, people were rushing out the door, and they were getting in line to buy books. And my friend Terry was selling books, and they were rushing up telling her, I could see auras in the room. I could see light. That must be what people are talking about. And Terry later said, what did you do in there? And I said, oh, I was just talking about the book, The Reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. And so she was telling me about all the excitement to people that were walking up to buy books. And finally, I did a channeling a few days later. And I said, could you explain the energy that was in the room? And they said, that was us. We were helping you. Now, that just totally blew my mind, because up to that point, I was getting all kinds of amazing information about how everything works, and suddenly they're telling me that they were in the room that I was in energetically, and that other people could feel them. And I knew people could feel them, and I knew I could see the energy. And I said, I wonder if the next time I give a talk, this will happen. And it did. It happened every time I was giving a talk. And in fact, some of you, when I start talking about this, it starts to happen. Some of you will notice that we went through a shift of energy. Something shifted when I started to talk about this. So for a number of months, I experimented with this phenomena, and it was fairly predictable and reliable. And so eventually I asked them, could you do this on a conference call? And they said they could. Now, remember, I'm scientific. I'm not believing that's true until it happens. So I started doing conference calls. I didn't tell people this was going to happen. We would read channelings at first. Eventually we started doing, I got confident enough that we started doing live channelings. And I kept getting emails from people, which I read a few earlier, about how they could feel energy on the line. Now, this is an amazing phenomenon, because what happens is, just as when you're in a movie theater and you're watching a movie and everyone feels the movie and there's a group energy, or any of the other ways I talked about, and there's many where people have group energies. Now we're on a conference line, and this intelligence that says it's the Elohim is explaining that we're feeling their energy. And it's like this is a big deal because you now have a group energy and you're now feeling a sense of love come into your system from a higher source that has no agenda other than to send you loving energy and help you open up your chakras. And many people in this realm are totally stuck with feeling loved. They want to feel loved. They're looking for it. They're looking for it in personal relationships. They're looking for it in meaning of their life. And now there is this voice, this intelligence that identifies itself as the Elohim. And as I don't want anyone to believe it, but that's how they identify themselves. And now there is most definitely an energy, a loving energy, coming into the space when I'm talking about them. And there have been a number of interesting phenomena that convinced me that they have the ability to project energy in this realm. If you recall early on, I talked about my sister who had a miracle of healing. And what happened was her lupus disappeared from her medical test. And according to Western medicine, lupus never goes away. It's always, it may be suppressed where you don't have symptoms, but it never goes away. And it left my sister. And at that point I went back and I asked them, how did you guys do that? And they said, we projected a filter into her blood and took the lupus out. Now that blew my mind because I couldn't figure out another explanation. She had a miracle, and that's what they said, and I gave it credence. And then another time, Terry was taking my picture for a publicity shot, and we were standing outside somewhere. She took a picture, and then I looked at it and I said, I don't like my expression here. And I said, why don't we call in the Elohim? We had a little invocation to call them in. Why don't we call them in and take another picture and see if I like myself better? And so we did. We called them in and took another picture, and I looked at it and I said, no, I still don't like it. I don't like my expression. So I forgot about it until a week later. And I was looking through my camera. I looked at the two pictures. And on the second picture, there was this pink glow all over my chest. So I went back and I asked them about it. And they said, well, that was us. When our energy comes into your realm and it beats against the energies of your realm, it turns pink. And that's what you were seeing. And I walked in the yard in Hollywood, and I was totally pink. And of course that was them, and they're helping. So they're not something to believe in. If you pay enough attention, they will either prove themselves to you, or you think I'm full of it. But I'm not full of it because I don't want followers. I don't want followers. I offered this because I see how it's helping people. Now, I'm talking right now, and I've been talking about this ability of them. This way. Let's have AI here. You hear that noise, Andrew? Andrew? What's going on here?
Okay, how you doing? recording now?
My recorder appears to be going. It's recording file size 124.44 kilobytes, so it's getting bigger. So, all right, I'll make sure I edit out this this little chit chat we're having at the beginning here when I combine the interview we did earlier and this one. So I'm going to have you on for about half an hour today to talk about how you are the reincarnation, if that's the appropriate word for me to use, of Benjamin Franklin.
That's can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't want to start off with that. Okay,
That's fine.
We can add it in there, but I don't want to make a big deal about it. You can just insert it, and I'll explain it.
Okay.
But you know, I don't usually even talk about it publicly, and it's counterproductive because who cares? First of all, who cares? Second of all,
I care. I'm a Philadelphian. I'm a city boy. He's one of my heroes.
Okay, well, you can say that. The other thing is that people think you're being self-aggrandizing because you're somebody famous in the past. So then they think you're trying to get attention for that, which I'm not. If I thought it was, if I'll try it out, and if I find out it attracts people to my work, I would say it more. That's the big deal. The bottom line is I'm doing something that's really important. I'm not here to entertain people. I can be very entertaining. I was an entertainer a good portion of my life. What I'm doing is really important, and it's hard for you to grasp it, you know, the first time you expose yourself, and you might never grasp it, but I know it's important. It's beyond just the moment of entertainment and engagement, you know? And that's what I want to go into right now. Okay. And then I can mention, I'll try to watch the time, and I can mention something about that being, you know, maybe being the reincarnation of Franklin, kind of as an aside, you know, incidental, not like a big deal. Okay? Is that okay? You follow?
Okay. And I'm trying to toy around with the buttons on my thing here. I'm trying to make sure I'm pressing the mute button so when you're talking, they won't hear me breathing in the background. So, all right, well, let's not worry about that. So why don't we just continue?
Here.
The mute will be going.
Here. Press the mute button and breathe. Let's see if we're okay.
Okay.
Okay, no breathing.
You did not hear me breathing. Okay, I was hyperventilating on purpose there. Okay, so that's good. So that means everything's good now? Let's go.
Yeah. If you don't mind, a good question to start out with, okay? And this will get me going, is like, what is the importance of what you're doing? Okay? So you're talking to the Elohim, and so what? What does it mean? What's in it for me? What's in it for the common person, right? Are you there, Andrew? Hello, Andrew.
Hello, can you hear me now? Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yes, okay, so just playing with this new mute button here. So, yes, that was a question for me. So, what's the question for me?
You want me to call you back and make it easy for you?
No, everything's cool. Everything's cool. I'm fine. It's just this is my first time trying this new headset, so I got to get used to pressing the button right near my ear. So that's how it works.
What kind of headset is it? Logitech?
No wire. Just plug the jack into the computer and a little thing pull it down from the earphones to speak into, and there's like little 4 buttons on the dial next to my right ear that I'm supposed to press, and the one near the back of my head, back of the ear, is the mute button. So I got to make sure I press that one when I'm talking.
What brand? What brand is it?
It was the most expensive Logitech one at Best Buy, so I can't go wrong with that.
Very good. It's very good quality.
Good to know.
Yeah.
The other one died. It was bound to happen. That was the problem all along. It was no
Well,
artificial Titan sabotage. It was, yeah,
that's the problem with the physicalized realm.
yeah.
We're all bound to die, you know. But okay, so just let's count it down, and you can just ask the question, and we'll go from there. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Winfrey, how you doing? Great to be speaking to you again. We'll be on for about half an hour today. And, well, you told me earlier about what you want to start off with, so I guess we'll go from there. And I got my little notepad handy right here to jot down anything that I find you say that might be interesting, that may be worth talking about. Go right ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you know, I've talked about earlier all this phenomena. I mean, having two personal relationships that are communicating to me with intelligences, and I had to figure out if I trusted them, if the information I was getting was worth repeating. And I did a lot of analysis because, you know, I put a lot of work into putting this out into the world for not very much money. In fact, mostly at a loss because I believe in it. And I've had to do other things to make money to fund this project. So I have two group souls, and I'll say how they identify themselves. One of them says they're the Council of Elohim, and they existed before there was a physical universe, and they actually created the beginnings of physicality. The other is the Ra group. The Ra group is a group soul made up of graduates of this realm who got off the wheel of reincarnation. Both group souls have millions of individual souls comprising them. And I've had the opportunity to ask numerous questions, thousands and thousands of questions, and testing them, and do I trust them? And what's the value for another person? Well, first of all, we've solved a huge amount of mysteries of life. You know, people don't have to believe it. You have to look at my work. You have to get into the work a little bit and make sure it resonates. It's not like it's something to follow. It has to resonate. And I've observed now what's happened to people who keep coming to my conference calls. And here's where it gets amazing. When I say, what's in it for you, or what's in it for somebody who wants to pay attention to this? The Elohim has the backdoor key to creation. And my first instance of even considering this idea was when my sister had her miracle and her lupus disappeared after I asked them if they could help her. And lupus never goes away. They said they would help, and her lupus disappeared. And I asked them how they did it. They said they projected a filter into her blood and took her lupus out. The next key was when I gave my first talk in San Diego on the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce in 2004. And I could see this energy floating around the room while I was talking. It was really bright, and I had never seen anything like that, at least from me. I've seen it when I've sat in the presence of some particular spiritual teacher, but I didn't know that that would happen around me, but there it was. And my friend Terry was selling books outside the door. She wasn't in the room. People were rushing out of the room saying, I could see auras in the room. I could see light. So it wasn't just me seeing it, it was the people in the room. And they had a very high lifted energy as they were doing this. And so after that, I asked them, can you explain that energy in the room? And they said, that was us. We were helping you. Now that absolutely blew my mind. Here I am, this little guy sitting in front of a room in a lecture hall, and this group soul that says they created the universe is using me to rebroadcast their energy into the room. Best way to describe it. Well, I did a number of talks, and every time I did a talk, this would happen. And I said, this is very important. And how do I get this to more people? It's actually lifting the vibration of people. People will come in, and their energy would shift while I was talking. So I said, if I did this on a conference call, could you help in this way? Could people feel your energy? And they said they could. Thus began a series of experiments of doing conference calls and seeing. I didn't tell people this was going to happen, but just observing to see if it would happen. If you tell people, it raises an expectation. Now I'm telling you, because we've done it so many times, and so many people have experienced energy, I'm not afraid to say it. But at that time, it was all an experiment. So we started doing conference calls, and people could feel energy. Now, I'll tell you, when I talk about this, right now, Andrew, they are paying attention to you and me and people that are watching this video. I say this because I've learned it. I've watched how it works. And if I stop talking, you can feel energy in the space.
Yeah, and I remember when we talked last time, the sound was breaking up, and you asserted that was the Elohim getting intermingling with our conversation. Well, how can you be so sure of that? The skeptics may assert. I think that's a question.
Well, you know what? I may have said that, but I don't know if I know that's true. Okay. I think there's a lot of reasons why things screw up. One of them is things just screw up. Another one is the negative is trying to block something. So I do notice that when the energy gets really high, things tend to screw up more for whatever reason. And you know what? Phenomena, one of the things, the Elohim can do phenomena. They can. It's happened. I mean, like one of the interesting phenomena that happened was my friend Terry took my picture for a publicity shot, and I didn't like the way it looked. So we called in the Elohim, and I said, let's take it again and see if I look better. I took a quick look at it, and I still didn't like it. And then later on, a week later, I was thumbing through the pictures, and I looked at the two pictures. And the second picture that she took after we called in the Elohim's energy, there was pink all over my chest. And hello?
Hello, how did we drop out there? Was that NSA sabotage or the Elohim or what?
That was another person calling me on my regular landline on my phone.
Oh, okay.
and it gave them precedence. Are we recording now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, let me just pick up where I was, okay, before I lose track. Sorry. So we looked at these pictures, and in the second picture, there was all this pink around my chest. And I had never seen that before. So we did a channeling session, and I asked them, I said, could you explain the pink around my chest? And they said, pink, when our energy interfaces with the Earth's energy, it becomes a pink color. And so you called on us, and that's why you saw the pink. And then there was another time where I was doing a talk in somebody's backyard in Hollywood, and somebody took my picture, and I was totally shrouded in pink, okay? Then there was a time when, I'm doing these conference calls, and I got people all over the place listening, and a guy sends me an email and said, I was listening to your call on a real player. And while I was watching, the normally black player turned pink. And he sent me the screenshot. So, these are some of the things that keep happening. And I'm only giving you a smidget of them that over time convinced me that it was a real deal. Now, can I get them to do that on demand? No, I don't control them. It happens. They don't want to do it on demand. They don't want people to give up their power to them. They want to be an inspiration for people to connect with their own power. And now we're doing these whole planet healing calls. And this is probably, if somebody wants to check this out, they can do it any day of the week, 7 p.m., wholeplanethealing.com. It's like a half-hour call, and what we do is we read about a 10-minute excerpt. So you get to hear how they talk. We don't channel on the call, but we read an excerpt from a channeling. And then we do a personal and planetary guided visualization. And what I learned was you have to experience this. So you don't believe me, but just consider the possibility. When you connect with these guys, there's an energy that flows into your body, comes in through your crown chakra, and it's like making a friend with an intelligence in another realm. On these calls, we create a group energy. There's the idea that we're all one. Well, not on this level are we all one, but in the higher levels, as you go up the dimensions, everything starts to converge. And at the higher levels, we are one. But we're not one in this level. But we exist in all levels simultaneously, but we're not aware of it. But you start to become aware of it, what happens is a group energy forms with the people you're with or you're connecting to, if they're into that same thing. And the Elohim can join that group energy, and then you can create intentions for shift, for healing, and they're there, and the intentions become more powerful. And that is like, the Elohim is not God, and they don't want to be God, although they've been recognized as God. But the fact that they can add to your intentions and help bring them about can easily lead to the idea of God. Because if I ask the Elohim, it'll happen. No, not always. They have a criteria for the highest good of all concerned and honoring free will. So when I first started talking to them, and I realized that
I cannot hear you. I cannot hear you. You seem to have dropped out. Oh, now I can hear, but you're breaking up again. All right.
It's not in your best interest. Is that good?
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay. It's not in your best interests to do that this lifetime. They're talking about gambling. And I can clearly see why they didn't want to do it, even though everyone would say, have them help you win the lottery or something. It's just that then everybody would want to connect with them to make money, which is certainly a prime concern in this realm, rather than for their own spiritual evolution. So I get emails from people that are on my calls that feel light around their heads. They feel patterns changing. They tell me their voice is getting better. Now, I'm not doing it. I'm just showing up. Anyone who's listening can show up. You just call Whole Planet Healing, go to that website and call the number and check it out. If it works for you, you'll be really happy you did. What they tell me is that there's millions of people in this dimension that have come in from higher dimensions to be of service here. But once they're here, they don't remember that. They have to rediscover it. In fact, there's even some people who come from the Elohim realm, who were Elohim, who volunteered to be in this dimension. And those people in particular, they get on my calls, and it's like they're immediately in a family. They feel connected. And we have seen a number of miracles happen on Whole Planet Healing. And people are getting their energies lifted up. So even though our planet is in deep doo-doo,
lifting above it. Another thing is we've done so many calls on what happens when you die that people start paying attention to my work, lose their fear of death. You know exactly what happens, how it feels, how to have the best death, what heaven is, okay? So once you get that feeling or that confidence about death, it changes your life tremendously. Because otherwise, when you think your body is all that is, and when your body goes, you're not here, life is easy to be afraid, all the time. I don't want to die. I don't want to stop existing. But you don't stop existing. I can tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, you don't stop existing. And occasionally, we've had somebody that was deceased come in and talk to us. And, we usually get famous people. For example, and I don't know why we get famous people, but we do. We had Michael Jackson after he died. And in Michael Jackson's case, I convinced myself it was really him. I don't have time to tell you how, but I did.
Actually, I hate to interrupt you there, but my understanding about Michael Jackson is the one that died was a clone. The real Michael Jackson appeared on Larry King as that burn victim named Dave, and then he disappeared working for the Illuminati. You're saying that's not true?
No, you know what? I read that as well, okay? Are we recording now?
Yeah.
Okay. I read that as well, about the guy who was on Larry King, and I don't know the answer to that. Maybe the clone, maybe the consciousness, maybe, I don't know the answer. I can only tell you that I shouldn't even bring it up because there's a whole story attached about how I got convinced it was really Michael Jackson. Okay? But I don't have time. We don't have time to go into that some other time. I can tell you, like with Robin Williams, I was talking to Robin Williams, and I test these guys. I really do. And I said, is this really Robin Williams? And then he starts telling me jokes about being on the other side, exactly in the vein of a Robin Williams joke. And then he said he had headaches this lifetime because in his past life, he was killed in a plane crash. And so I asked him, I said, so who were you in your past life? And he told me, Will Rogers. Do you know who Will Rogers was?
Yeah, I do.
And then I compared a picture of Robin and Will Rogers, and it was uncanny. And, you know, both of them had a certain similar style of comedy. Both of them would hobnob with presidents and everyone else. My gut instinct, most people that look at the picture say, yeah, they look the same. But I'm not trying to prove that. You know, I convinced myself, I tell the story, but I don't have time to tell the story about Michael Jackson. And I saw the Larry King thing, and I saw the guy that was disfigured, you know, and I didn't know the answer to it, and I still don't. So I probably shouldn't tell that story. Okay, but in any case, we have had people on our conference calls where somebody had died, and they ask that the Elohim check them out, and we get a report, and then the person who asked said, yeah, that was the person. It's something. I'm not here to tell people to believe anything. All I can do is make somebody curious to check me out, and if it contributes something to your life, keep it up. And that's it, you know? And that's all.
Okay.
What else, man?
What else? Well, I know you didn't want to start out with it, but I definitely have to bring it up. And oh my God, so much echoing in these headphones. Oh well, now it's going away. I don't know what the hell that was all about, but apparently it's gone. Yes, when it comes to these people that used to be someone else in a past time and then came back as in another time, you show the face, and the faces seem to bear a striking resemblance. Well, when we're talking about, how can you compare and contrast that with the phenomenon of reincarnation? When we talk about reincarnation, we're talking about soul and consciousness essence, people would think, but you're talking about no, it's more of a biological nature when we're talking about this kind of thing, when you got the faces of the people and you're comparing them, and there's like maybe skin suit soul shards. I don't know if that's the proper way to view it.
Listen, here's the answer to that. It's a very simple answer. All right? Your DNA is the building block of your body, okay? When you die, your soul carries the imprint of your DNA. When the soul enters a new body, a new fetus, it programs the new fetus with the DNA, the old DNA. Now, there's not just the old DNA. There's the parents' DNA, there's society DNA, there's lots of different DNAs. If you had a strong expression in your past life, there's a pretty good chance you'll have a strong resemblance to that particular lifetime. And I have seen this over and over again, beyond any chance of coincidence. It started out with David Wilcock. Now, David Wilcock had a lot of things connecting him to Edgar Cayce, but one of them was his appearance. He was the spitting image of a young Edgar Cayce. And you meet the same people from lifetime to lifetime, people say. And David's father looked like Cayce's father. David's girlfriend looked like Cayce's wife. It was billions of one to chances. Now, in my case, I'll tell you the story of the past life you would like me to talk about, okay? Now, I would say, whenever I talk about this stuff, I don't care. I'm not trying to prove anything. Most people that read the Reincarnation of Edgar Cayce believe the evidence tying Wilcock to Cayce is overwhelming and billions to one odds. But you can decide yourself. In my case, it was in 2008, and I was living in Boulder City, Nevada, with Daphne. And she was having incredible panic attacks, and I was having trouble getting anything done. And if I was in the house, she was very sensitive, and if I was in the house and I'd make a phone call, she'd start screaming at me. And I had this compulsion to get my work into the world, and so I had an idea. I learned how to. Somebody was sending me. You know what an autoresponder is, Andrew?
Autoresponder? Maybe I do, maybe I don't.
Okay. You know how you can go on certain websites and sign up and get on the email list? Of course you know that, right? Everybody
I
knows
do that.
So there's such a thing as an autoresponder where you sign up and you get an automated string of emails. Email 1, 2, and you can, and you know, you can space them out every day, every other day, every week. It's up to you, you know? And so you can develop an ongoing rapport with somebody without even paying attention to it if you structure your emails correctly. So in 2008, it was very easy for me to get attention for the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. And I had people visiting that website, and the book sold fairly well. But I lost interest in promoting it because I was in the middle of my own experience of having conversations with this source that said they were the Elohim and everything else. So I had the idea that I was going to set an autoresponder up on my Reincarnation of Edgar Cayce website. And somebody would sign in, and I'd say, sign in here for excerpts from the book and other relevant information. So for the first 2 weeks, they'd get excerpts from the book. And then I'd start telling them my story of how my girlfriends were channeling. And I put in excerpts from the channelings. And it was actually a 6-month series, an email, I called it Message a Day. In fact, that website is still up there. I haven't been talking about it recently, but if you go to messageaday.net, you can sign up and get on this series of emails, messageaday.net. And so, you know, I spent about 2 months putting this together. And finally, in a channeling, they told me, and I didn't solicit this, they told me, they just brought it up, they said, the reason I chose to incarnate in Philadelphia was because I was one of the founders of the country. And I said, which one? And they said, you'll have to figure it out. So now I am going through the revolution. I'm looking, was it George Washington? Who could it have been? And when I hit the one it was, there was no doubt it was me in my mind, the more I studied him. And it was Benjamin Franklin. And just a little bit about my background. When I was young, I was very technical. I was building transmitters in my basement. I was putting antennas on my roof, talking to people all over the world. I had a first-class commercial radio license. I used to work as an engineer for KYW. When I was in high school, I worked in an electronics store in downtown Philadelphia called Soundtronics. And it was on Arch Street, and at least once a week, I would take a walk and stare at Independence Hall. My favorite place in Philadelphia was the Franklin Institute. And I used to go there as much as I could, and I actually remember going there and staring at the statue of Benjamin Franklin and thinking in my mind, I know what it was like, felt like to be this guy, okay? And, I mean, I didn't know about reincarnation. I just had that thought, and I still remember having that thought. So I happened to look like Benjamin Franklin. I hope we're not getting weak. Can you hear me, Andrew?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. And, well, I want to, this is a tough question to ask you.
I got to,
but
before you ask me,
okay.
before you ask the question, I got to tell you one thing, okay? Why did they go out of the way to bring that up? Okay? They do not usually do that. And they went out of the way to point me in that direction. So the reason was, now they didn't tell me this, but as I thought about it, it was obvious. I was doing Message a Day. I was putting in an excerpt from a channeling every day that people would get in their emails. I was thinking exactly the way Franklin thought when he did Poor Richard's Almanac, where he did, his sayings every day. A penny saved is a penny earned and all that stuff. And, they wanted me to see how my mind was working to do the same process as Franklin did. So go ahead, Andrew. Ask me a question.
Yeah, when it comes to Benjamin Franklin, he's one of the founding fathers that, and I'm quoting Alex Jones here, he once said, Benjamin Franklin, love him, hate him. Well, most of the diehard American patriots would say, well, where did the hate him come from? Well, here's the thing. People like David Icke, and I disagree with David Icke in some of this regards what he thinks like the American Revolution, like the Founding Fathers, they knew it was a staged event. To my understanding and from my research, it says the Founding Fathers were basically innocent pawns in the American Revolution. They cared about fighting for freedom. They wanted everybody to be free, and they had no idea that their Illuminati masters were actually planning to, over the course of time, get rid of everything that the Founding Fathers fought for by brainwashing the American people into giving up liberty for security. And Benjamin Franklin, of course, made that quote about that and all. And the Founding Fathers would, in fact, be spinning if their graves if they saw that. And but David Icke, on the other hand, he asserts, no, the Founding Fathers weren't stupid. They knew what was going on. And in some of his presentations, he really said some really naughty things about Benjamin Franklin, saying he's like the Henry Kissinger of his day, and he was an agent of the British Crown. He spent a lot of time in London. He was a Satanist. He sacrificed children and all. And well, Alex Jones said, well, I can't argue with this. He was an Illuminist, so that's where the love him, hate him comes in. But this kind of makes you wonder: was there perhaps some brainwashing done to Freemasons back in colonial times? Like, was Benjamin Franklin, maybe the reason he was a Satanist was because he was under mind control perhaps, and when he sacrificed children, that was his alter ego, and his Illuminati masters maybe made him do that against his will, and he was really wanted to be a good guy, and he had no idea that he was doing bad things. On the other hand, and well, he was a great Freemason, of course, never missed a lodge meeting at all. But this idea that Benjamin Franklin is someone that you got to be skeptical about because he was a fire and brimstone Satanist, and so was Thomas Jefferson. They were both members of the Hellfire Club, and you don't get into the Hellfire Club unless you're a fire and brimstone Satanist. Is there anything you can say about this controversial issue that many American patriots will not touch?
Well, I will tell you that I have no memory of any of it. I have no memory of being Benjamin Franklin. I put it together based on what I just told you. Now, when I found out that everything seemed to point that I was Franklin, I did study him, and I came across all those things. And I said, is this possible? And I said, yeah, could it be possible? I'm not going to say it's not possible. I looked at various aspects of Franklin. One of the things that was good about him was that he was a man of the people. He was always, in Philadelphia, he was doing things to benefit the common folks, like the first university, the first library, the first fire company, the first insurance company, as I recall. And he contributed to the common folks. About his luminous things, there's a very interesting thing that I read, that people come into this realm from higher dimensions, and they come here because they want to make a contribution, and they usually get caught in many lifetimes, and sometimes going into really negative things in some of those lifetimes. And that the point they were making is the going into negative things was training the person to be able to understand how the negative works and not get caught up in it. But maybe in that lifetime they did get caught up in it. But when we're talking about this realm, we're talking about a long-term project. And this particular lifetime, I am very sensitive to all of those things. And I'm very sensitive to avoiding, avoiding temptation on all levels. And, working on myself so that I can do the work I'm doing and not get corrupted. So I really can't say what Benjamin did and what he didn't do. I know that every lifetime is a blank slate. And no matter what you were, you're rewriting the slate, but you carry the patterns of the past life until you can release them. So I think I've worked out a lot of old patterns from many lifetimes. And, if I screwed up, I just have to forgive myself and do the very best I can this lifetime. So, any questions?
Well, do the best you can, and I'm very happy to hear you say that. And well, I think we may want to end it now because we've got about half an hour, and I combined this interview with the last. It'll be little over 2 hours. And one thing I've been making a big stink about on my radio show in recent times, ever since I did my session with Andrew Bartzis, the Akashic Records reader, in December, where he made it clear to me, one of the reasons my show ain't doing so well in terms of view count is because I do 2-hour shows and people naturally have lousy attention spans, and that's going to cost me some potential listeners, so I need to make a stink out of this to give the human race a nice kick in the pants on a regular basis. Sorry if I sound like a broken record, but I think that being said, it may be a good point to end this now because I'm going to have to combine these interviews, and it is about 2 hours and 10 minutes at this point. So it was a pleasure talking to you. And as far as Terry Brown goes, do you know if she would be interested in coming on the show, or do you really not want to get into that? And by the way, get out anything you like right now before we call it a day.
Well, let me just say, you heard a lot of far out things on this show. Kick my tires. I give things away for free. A lot of things. I give a book I wrote called The Creator Gods of the Physical Universe Want to Talk to You. And that is intelligent-infinity.com. Intelligent-infinity.com. Just download the book and read it and see if you resonate with it. You can still go to Message a Day and sign up for my original 150 messages that I did in 2008. MessageAday.net. Every day at 7 o'clock, we're doing whole planet healing. And that's, you can get the phone number. Put these up, if you could, Andrew, at the bottom of the YouTube. wholeplanethealing.com. And since I'm giving all this stuff for free, and I started to develop an email list, I found a product that I decided to mention every time I give a talk that you can go look at. It's let me just say, I won't pitch it. I'll just say go to wellnesspendant.net, wellnesspendant.net, and if you use the word gratitude, the price will drop. So check it out. You'll see it's amazing. You wear it, and it changes your vibratory field. It changes your aura. It cheers you up. And the Illuminati has nothing to do with it. Doesn't make any money on it. So that's it.
Yeah,
Andrew?
sorry. I had trouble pressing the button on my headset. So that's wellnesspendant.com, you said?
.net.
.net. All right, I may order one. I do wear an amethyst necklace at all times, but for the sake of variety, maybe I'll buy one of those wellness pendants you got, and maybe every other day I'll wear that, and every other day I'll wear the amethyst, and see if things change. I'll do a little research on that myself. Glad you pointed that out.
Let me tell you that these were selling in various multi-levels. One in particular, or the same technology, not the same pendant, but the same technology, for like $100, $200. I read so many testimonials from people on YouTube who were wearing these things, and I said, I wonder if they really work. So I did some scouring, and I found some Chinese factories, and I bought a bunch of samples, and I found one that was really working. And I passed it around to some people. Everybody was noticing it. And then I decided I was going to sell them really cheap. And we put them up on the web for $34. But when somebody uses the discount code, it goes down to $25. You'll see an amazing photo, or video actually, that we did at a New Age convention. That you ever see those aura cameras, Andrew?
Yeah, I have. And by the way, what is the code word again? I want to make sure I get this right.
Gratitude.
Gratitude. Okay.
Yeah. So I just want to say,
aura cameras. I'm not familiar with that. I don't know.
Well, when you stand in front of it, it shows all these colors around you. Okay, and the guy purports that he's actually sensing the aura. Well, what happened was he took my pendant, took it over to his booth, and he put it on. He was running the camera, and while he was running the camera, they put the pendant on somebody, and their aura just totally changed immediately in a more positive direction. So I have a video of that on my website, and it's very impressive. Plus, I get all kinds of testimonials, chiropractors, all kinds. I mean, I blow my mind. That's why I kept selling it, because of the testimonials. Go take a look at it, wellnesspendant.net.
I will. And by the way, there's two of them, the ground one and the flow one. I don't really know if I need the ground one because I'm pretty grounded, but the flow one is definitely worth getting into. Just briefly, why don't you just compare and contrast the two, so people know what they're getting.
The ground works on the lower chakras, and the flow works on the higher chakras. More focused on. They both work on everything, but that's where the focus is. And if you notice on there, you can buy both of them, and there's even a bigger discount. You can get both for $44. Sometimes it's good to switch from one to the other, because your body can get used to one, and when you switch it, it breaks the pattern, and then you switch back. But that's the difference.
Thank you very much. So, without further ado, I guess I might as well. Can you hear me?
I'll add one more thing about the pendants.
Okay.
When we first started selling them, what I did was I did not sell it to people I knew. I went down to the local health food store in Sedona. It's called New Frontiers. And I talked the manager into letting me put them on consignment. And I didn't think they would sell, quite frankly. And over the next 2 months, they sold 80. And they couldn't believe it. they said people were, Sedona is a fairly sophisticated metaphysical town. People were doing pendulums. People were doing muscle testing. And they continued selling them. And in fact, they sold them all the way until about 2 years ago when they sold their store to Whole Foods, and Whole Foods didn't want to carry them. But then we got some other stores, and we kept duplicating that success. And you can read some of the testimonials from store owners on my website. I got audios. I did video testimonials because people are skeptical of these kinds of things. Excuse me. And I'm skeptical. So when somebody had a really good response to it, I just would record them. And I couldn't fake that. So in any case, that's all.
Well, one more thing I need to address. I have had a little bit of a problem when it comes to buying things like chips to protect me from EMFs and pendants and amethysts and talismans and like that. It turns out that some of my spirit guides and guardian angels seem to be of the klepto variety. They take the pendants and talismans from me, and this isn't me talking. This is my paternal grandfather on the other side talking. When I actually called one of the people that I bought this from, and one of his wife was like channeling my grandfather on the other side, and she said, "Got a message from your grandfather." She said, "Your angels and guides are taking your talismans and pendants from you. It's basically a way of saying we're here for you. You don't need to waste your money on these things because we're going to do the energy work for you that these pendants do." So some people who believe in that would think I shouldn't waste my money on this because my angels and guides are going to protect me. But then again, one would say, well, I don't know. It's a nice decoration and all, so maybe it's worth buying. So have you ever had any issues with these things disappearing?
No.
No. Okay. That's good to know.
But I do think ultimately you can get yourself in a good enough state of balance that you don't need anything like this. But most people are not able to do that, and at least in the present moment of their life. So anything that helps is positive. They last forever. What do you got to lose? If you wear a pendant and it gives you one good day of your life, it's worth $25, So that's all.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So pleasure having you on. Thank you for coming on, and I wish you the best of luck on your future endeavors, and enjoy the rest of your trek throughout infinite consciousness, and Happy Mother's Day. You're not my mother, but I might as well say that to all the people out there who are trying to acknowledge Mother's Day and doing something lovely for their mamas. So,
right. But then by the time they listen to this, it's going to be next week.
Yeah, probably. So, all right. Take care now.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Andrew.
You're welcome.
And thank you for being a good interviewer.
You're very welcome.